The shooting of Chris Kaba and its aftermath have become emblematic of the complex and contentious issues surrounding policing, justice, racial dynamics in the UK. In the wake of the exoneration of Sergeant Martin Blake by the Old Bailey jury, Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley has issued a sharp, albeit veiled, rebuke aimed at political figures and public influencers, including the Mayor Sadiq Khan and Labour MPs. His words underscore an intricate balance between protecting police integrity and addressing public concerns over racial disparity and systemic justice. Sir Mark's remarks came at the Crime Stoppers annual dinner in Westminster, where he articulated the weight that influential voices carry in shaping public discourse. He argued that while trust in law enforcement is a collective responsibility, too often this burden is exacerbated by voices that fracture unity rather than foster it. And specifically, he noted how the trial's narrative was clouded by external commentary focused on Kabas' ethnicity, despite not being part of the jury's deliberations. This, he suggested, risked distorting public perception and undermining the justice system itself. And it's worth looking back at the events that led to Chris Kaba's death, the shooting of Chris Kaba, this 24-year-old black man, which took place on September the 5th, 2022, and sparked widespread public outcry and protest. Kaba, an unarmed father-to-be, was shot by a Metropolitan Police officer during an attempted vehicle stop in Streatham Hill in South London. The incident raised significant questions about police conduct, systemic racism, and the use of force by law enforcement. And the events unfolded when Kaba was driving this Audi, which had been flagged as connected to a firearms incident, although he was later found not to be armed. Armed officers boxed in the vehicle to stop it, and one officer fired a single fatal shot that struck Kaba. The Independent Office for Police Conduct launched an investigation into the incident, which included a thorough review of body camera footage, witness testimony, and forensic evidence. And the shooting ignited protests led by Kaba's family, activists, civil rights groups demanding justice and transparency, and the case was emblematic of broader issues regarding police treatment of black individuals in the UK, particularly black men, drawing comparisons to police shootings in the United States that had spurred movements like Black Lives Matter. The incident prompted debates in Parliament, statements from public figures, significant media coverage focused on police accountability, racial profiling, and trust between the Metropolitan Police and minority communities. The officer involved was later suspended from duty, and the IOPC's investigation tried to determine whether the use of lethal force was justified and followed police protocols. His death underscored long-standing issues regarding policing in Britain and the experiences of black communities with law enforcement, which is not good. Calls for reform and a re-examination of policies on the use of force were renewed, pushing the conversation about racial disparity and institutional charges in the UK policing to the forefront. But of course, there were things which, quite frankly, we didn't know. And Sir Mark's critique didn't stop at those he viewed as misguided and misguiding the public debate. He expanded the conversation to include a broader reflection on youth crime and the exploitation perpetuated by gangs such as the 67 Collective, of which Kaba was apparently a part. He highlighted 2 years of intense public scrutiny during which political figures like Ribeiro-Addy, Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott joined Kabas' family in calling for justice and change. And the exoneration of Sergeant Blake, who acted under pressure of potentially life-threatening circumstances, as Kaba, who had already been flagged up, this is the important point, attempted to force his way past police with a vehicle linked to multiple violent incidents, sparking fresh protests and amplifying demands for transparency and reform. Sir Mark highlighted the disproportionate risks young black men face, noting that they are 13 times more likely to be murdered than their white counterparts, pointedly asking why these stark figures do not provoke a national outcry akin to the one seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, when black and Asian deaths seemed higher than were scrutinised. The Commissioner's remarks also touched on the growing apprehension among officers, exacerbated by stringent oversight from bodies like the Independent Office for Police Conduct and the Crown Prosecution Service. He warned of a chilling effect on proactive policing, citing instances of officers relinquishing tasers or avoiding pursuits because of the legal risks, a reality that complicates both community safety and effective law enforcement. But despite the acquittal, the case remains a focal point for continued debates on policing, community relations and accountability. And while Sir Mark called for collective honesty in addressing the root causes of violence and gang involvement, Kaba's family has pledged to carry forward their campaign, seeking deeper change and answers that resonate with broader calls for equity and for justice. The Commissioner's speech underscored a pivotal moment, a demand for unity and rebuilding trust against the backdrop of tragedy and the complex social issues that demand far more than sound bites or isolated indignation.